So the fan on my 8-year-old power supply is beginning to go out, and it's also been emitting some coil whine during heavy use. It served me well, but it's time to proactively replace it out. All you'll need is a Phillips head screwdriver, diagonal cutters, zip ties to keep things nice and tidy, and of course a new power supply. I was able to successfully perform the power supply replacement. That said, each configuration is different, so please do your own research for your specific config prior to performing this procedure. There's proprietary power supplies out there that make this procedure not super straightforward, so you assume all responsibility and risk when performing the following procedure. Okay, let's get started. Alright, so the first thing I do is go to an online power supply calculator and plug in the components in my rig to get a rough estimate of the recommended power supply wattage. I usually just go to the one on outervision.com. The recommended power supply wattage for my configuration came out to be 410 watts. I typically like to get at least 50% more than the required for a little padding and potential future growth. So I ended up purchasing the Corsair CX650M. I'll put a link in the description below. Actually, let me get rid of this plastic wrap to minimize the glare. This particular unit has a 5-year warranty and an 80+ bronze rating for efficiency. It's a semi-modular power supply, that way you won't have unnecessary cabling that you have to tuck away and hide. Continuous power output, not to be confused with some of the more inexpensive units out there that advertise the max power output, and a variable speed fan, which is nice to keep things nice and quiet. Okay, and within the box we have the paperwork, we have the power supply cable. Oh, looks like this particular unit already comes with some zip ties and the 4 screws to secure the power supply to the computer case. We got a assortment of cables. It's actually kind of nice to see that these are black versus the regular ketchup and mustard style. And then, of course, we have the power supply. And the power supply itself has the power cord connector, on-off switch. Looks like we got the specs for the power supply. And finally, we got the modular connectors. So looks like we got the peripherals and the SATAs up on top, and the 2 PCIEs on the bottom. And regarding the standard connectors that are attached to the power supply, looks like we got the 24-pin connector and the 8-pin CPU connector. And now let's go through the available cables. Let's see, we got one with 2 PCIe connectors. Looks like we got the same, another one, 2 PCIe connectors, and typically these guys are for graphics cards. Okay. Next we got some SATA connectors, and you could tell by this little L shape that they have. This particular one looks to have 2 connectors. Same deal, SATA connectors. Typically these are for hard drives and CD, DVD-ROM drives. Looks like there's 4 connectors on this particular one. And finally you got one with a Molex connector. And a floppy drive connector for those of us that still have those. Actually, I may need to use this one for the fans that I have in my computer. Okay, and SATA connectors for hard disk drive, SSDs, and DVD-ROM drives. The power connector can just be pulled right out. And PCIe connectors have a little tab that we need to push down on and then pull out. And this graphics card happens to have two. All right, and the CPU connector also has a little tab that we need to push down on and then pull up. And here we have the 24-pin connector. It's hidden in this particular situation, but there is a tab behind this bundle of cables. Just make sure you depress it and once again pull up. And then do a final check to make sure that everything connected to the power supply is disconnected. In my specific case, I do have some case fans that are connected using these old Molex connectors, so make sure you undo these. I did have to cut a few zip ties, but I was able to get everything connected to this power supply disconnected. All right, here's the cables. And moving to the back of the case, to remove the power supply from the case, all you have to do is remove these 4 screws. And now the power supply should slide forward and out. And here's a comparison of the old power supply and cables and the new. All right, and now let's secure the new power supply into the case using the provided screws. And I usually like to lightly tighten these screws initially, and once you get all 4 screws in, then crank them down. Okay, and I'm going to start with the 8-pin CPU connector, and it'll only go in one way because the connector itself is keyed. Let me see if I can get a close-up of this. There you go. And then just push it in until it clicks. There you go. Next, we're going to go to the 24-pin motherboard connector, and same deal, it'll only go in one way. And next, just push in any Sata connectors you may have. Just make sure that it's firmly seated. And next we have the PCIe connectors. In this example, we have an 8-pin connector and a 6-pin connector. Finally, I hooked up all the remaining accessories. In this case, some case fans. Alright, and now double check all your power connections and place the power supply in the on position. All right, let's power it up, confirm everything is working. All right, let's log in. Okay. Let's confirm that all the drives are there, and indeed they are. And let's check internet access. Looking good. Okay, if you found this video helpful, please click like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you.